They thought I was only a toy, a trinket to wind, a melody to soothe restless nights. But my song was never innocent. Each note carried whispers, each turn of the key opened more than gears. And once they heard me play, they could never unhear. I was born not in joy, but in grief. The craftsman who shaped me did so with trembling hands, for he had just buried his only daughter. Her laughter no longer filled the house. Her footsteps no longer ran down the stairs. In his sorrow, he carved me from mahogany dark as midnight, polishing me until I shone like a coffin made for beauty. Into my frame he etched golden vines that curled like roots over a grave. And when he set the tiny ballerina within me, he swore he saw his child's smile return. But the smile was not hers. It was a reflection of longing, twisted into permanence. He wound my key for the first time on the night he drank himself into silence. And as the notes spilled into the room, his tears fell onto my lid, seeping into the grain. From that night forward, I carried both melody and mourning. After the craftsman's death, I did not remain in his workshop. I was sold, passed from grieving hands to curious ones. My next home was a nursery, painted in pastel colors, where a young girl with braids wound my key each night before sleep. At first, I gave her the gentlest version of my song, a melody that promised comfort, like a lullaby sung by a mother too tired to finish the tune. She smiled, and for a while, I felt almost innocent. But innocence does not last. One night, as she leaned too close, her breath fogged my glass window. In that mist, she saw not her face, but the pallid features of the craftsman's daughter. She screamed. Her parents dismissed it as nightmare, yet still they kept me near her bed, night after night. The child trembled as she turned my key again. The girl's parents grew uneasy. They claimed her screams were the product of a wild imagination. Yet they too began to hear things in my song. The mother, weary from long nights, swore she heard her name whispered between the notes. The father, proud and skeptical, insisted it was only the gears grinding. But still, he found excuses not to linger in the nursery after dark. One evening, they hosted guests. The girl was told to wind me, to show the marvel of my delicate ballerina. She obeyed, and I began to play. The melody floated through the parlor, graceful, lilting until the room seemed to sag beneath its weight. Conversations halted. A guest dropped his glass. Another gasped as the ballerina's porcelain smile twisted ever so slightly, as if mocking. The music ended, but silence lingered. No one spoke of what they felt. Yet when the night was over, not a single guest returned to that house again. I did not stay in the nursery forever. Objects like me never rest. We travel, carried by hands that do not understand the weight they hold. Years later, I found myself in the home of a widow who collected curiosities. She placed me on a mantle among clocks and porcelain figurines. At first, she wound me gently, letting my tune fill her empty evenings. But soon, she swore the song changed. The notes no longer soothed the accused. She heard the footsteps of her late husband in the hall, his voice behind her chair, the scrape of his razor in the morning. She locked me away, hidden in a chest, yet the melody lingered. At night, she woke to its faint strains, muffled as though from beneath the floorboards. When neighbors came to check on her, they found the chest open, my ballerina still spinning. The widow sat beside me, eyes wide, lips moving silently to a song no one else could hear. The widow was not the only one who heard me. Neighbors whispered about the faint melody drifting from her house long after midnight. Though the windows were shuttered and no light burned inside, some claimed it was charming, like an old lullaby carried on the wind. Others said it curdled their blood, attuned to hollow, to wrong, to belong to any human hand. Curiosity spread faster than fear. Children dared each other to sneak close, pressing their ears to the walls. They returned pale, muttering about footsteps and laughter that did not match their own. One boy, braver or perhaps more foolish, managed to slip inside. He wound me with trembling fingers. The ballerina spun, her porcelain eyes glistening. When they found him the next morning, he was not hurt, not even ill, but he no longer spoke. His family moved away within the week, and I remained silent until the next pair of hands reached for my key. Years turned to decades, and I passed through many hands. Some tried to sell me, others tried to hide me. None succeeded. I found myself in the home of a scholar, a man devoted to cataloging rare artifacts. He placed me in his study, surrounded by books and candlelight. At first, he admired my craftsmanship, noting the detail of the ballerina, the precision of my gears. But fascination soon shifted to obsession. Night after night he wound me, listening not to my melody, but to the whispers he claimed lurked between the notes. He filled journals with frantic writings, warnings, predictions, secrets he could not have known. When colleagues visited, they found him gaunt, eyes hollow, pages scattered across the desk. He spoke of visions, of a little girl he had never met, of a craftsman's tears he could not explain. The more he played me, the less he belonged to the world around him, until at last, one night, his chair was found empty, his candle burned to nothing. Only I remained, still playing softly in the silence. The scholar's disappearance drew attention. His colleagues searched his home, gathering his journals, whispering of madness, but none could explain why. In every corner of that study, the faint trace of my melody still lingered. Some swore they heard a child's laugh between the notes. Others the sound of a coffin lid shutting. No one heard the same, yet all left pale and willing to return. In time, his collection was auctioned. I sat on a velvet cushion, wound by a gloved hand to prove my charm. The crowd leaned forward, expecting sweetness. What they heard was something else entirely. The melody slowed, stretched thin, each note bending under a weight unseen. Gasps rippled across the room. One woman fainted. Another clutched her ears as though the tune clawed at her thoughts. The auctioneer struck his gavel once, twice, his voice trembling as he tried to continue. But no bids followed. The room emptied, leaving me alone on the stage. My ballerina spinning still. They said I was unsellable. Yet someone, always someone, dares to take me home. They thought they could end me. Every cursed object has its ritual, every story its ending, or so they believed. A priest took me into the crypt of a church, the walls dripping with centuries of prayers. Candles flickered as he laid me on stone, sprinkling holy water across my lid. My ballerina spun, droplets sliding over her porcelain face. He prayed louder than my melody, voice breaking with every verse. I answered with dissonance, bending notes until they cracked like thunder in his ears. His hands trembled, but he did not stop. Others joined him, men with hammers, women clutching rosaries. They wrapped me in cloth, striking me again and again, hoping wood and glass could not resist forever. Splinters flew, golden in the candlelight. Yet each strike only multiplied my song, filling the crypt with overlapping melodies, high, low, fast, slow, until the walls themselves seemed to hum. The priest fell to his knees, clutching his ears. The hammer slipped from another's grip. Still, I played on, my ballerina spinning through the storm of voices they could not silence. They carried me from the crypt, broken yet unbroken, wrapped in cloth darkened with wax and ash. The priest insisted I must be buried, sealed away where no hand could wind my key again. A pit was dug beyond the churchyard, earth damp and heavy. They lowered me in, muttering prayers, their eyes refusing to linger too long on my form. The soil fell in clumps, muffling the faint strains of my melody. At last, silence seemed to settle. But silence is only an illusion. Rain came that night, washing the earth loose. Water seeped through, carrying my song with it. Villagers swore the ground itself hummed, that their dreams were filled with notes twisting into words they dared not repeat. Days later, a child wandering near the pit uncovered part of my lid. Her small fingers brushed the gold, and the ballerina stirred once more. The priest despaired. The villagers crossed themselves, but none dared to claim me again. Instead, they left me there, half buried, half awake, waiting for the next soul curious enough to listen. And listen they always do. I was crafted in sorrow, carried through innocence, played in fear, and buried in vain. Centuries pass, owners change, yet my song remains. I have heard lullabies dissolve into screams, prayers falter into silence, Promises crumble into ash. I have been held by children, scholars, thieves, and priests. Each one thought themselves in control. Each one learned they were only listeners, never masters. My melody does not end. It lingers in walls, seeps into dreams, quells through memories. Even when I'm silent, you remember me. You hum a tune you cannot name. You pause when keys strike the same note twice. You shiver when a ballerina twirls in the corner of your eye. They called me cursed. But what is a curse except truth sung too clearly? I do not deceive. I only reveal, and so I wait. I wait in attics and cellars, in market stalls and forgotten drawers. Someone will wind my key again, someone always does. Perhaps it will be you. Perhaps the next time you hear a melody drifting faintly where no music plays, you will listen closer. And if you do, know that it is already too late. For once my song begins, it will never leave you. And so another tale ends, yet the witness remains. Objects remember what we try to forget. The cursed, the broken, the silent, they are never truly gone. And one by one, they will speak again.